My buddy, Field Yates, ESPN NFL insider, fantasy expert, host of NFL Live, all-around great human. Field, what's up, man? How you doing?
First of all, Steve, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on. But did I miss the part where we weren't talking tennis right now? Because I've been preparing my notes for only Djokovic talk.
How's your game, by the way? You still playing at the casino?
Rusty, yes, but rusty. It has probably taken the backseat to golf. The problem is you wouldn't be able to tell from my golf game, Steve. So I'm starting to wonder whether I'm sort of misallocating my time resources these days.
It may be. Field and I, by the way, had a battle royale on the red clay of the casino courts in Nantucket back in the day. So much fun. But maybe if you invite me back to Nantucket, you'll get back into the tennis.
Little longer trek, but you have an open invite.
I love it. Field, NFL minicamps wrapping up around the league. What are your biggest headlines coming out?
I would say what's taking place in Buffalo right now, Steve, and I think that everybody knows what has taken place with Stefon Diggs, but for those that may have missed it quickly, the head coach of the Bills, Sean McDermott, said yesterday, 2 days ago, that he was very concerned about the fact that Stefon Diggs was not with the team for the first practice of mandatory minicamp. And I would say 9 times, maybe even 95 times out of 100, when a player is missing a mandatory minicamp day, the answer is pretty straightforward. He wants a new contract. Well, Stefon Diggs got a new contract last year. And by the way, it still holds up as one of the top receiver deals in the NFL. And beyond that, 95 out of 100 times in which an issue bubbles up to the surface, it's not from the team. Sean McDermott volunteered this drama, so to speak, in Buffalo. And a day later, they said that everything had been resolved and things were hunky-dory. At least that was what they led us to believe. I just have a hard time buying the idea that within 24 hours, issues that were deep enough to lead Stefon Diggs to leave the practice facility and for Sean McDermott to say that he was very concerned can all of a sudden be smoothed over. I'm continuing to keep an eye on how things are resolved there in Buffalo.
I'm with you, because to go from very concerned to being in a great spot, having Josh Allen basically say, I love this guy. I want nothing more than great things for him. And now it's okay. I mean, what do you think is going on there? Do you think it's a quarterback receiver situation, or is it deeper than that with the entire team?
It feels like it's deeper than that, because it doesn't seem like Stefon and Josh Allen are at odds. Josh Allen reiterated that he and Stefon have a great relationship. He used words that we can't use on TV or radio to describe just how much he feels about Stefon Diggs in a positive way. This is something that could be maybe much deeper than anything from those of us on the outside could ascertain, Steve, or it could be things that we maybe have taken notice of in the past. Is Stefon Diggs being utilized enough or correctly in large moments? Because unfortunately for the Bills, for all the talent they have and all of the success that they have had over the past 2 years, they've entered the echelon of teams where success is no longer measured by winning 13 games in 16 tries last year in the regular season. It is measured by a team that either wins or does not win the Super Bowl, and they have yet to do that, obviously, in franchise history and over the past few years with Josh Allen playing at the level that he has. So it feels like we've entered a new era of expectations for the Bills, and when you have those big expectations, having less than perfect performances in the playoffs might lead to some real frustration.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I also say, Field, believe what people post on social media. Believe what they say. I mean, he's been telling us all off season that something is going on. I mean, you look at all the Instagram captions and the slides that he's putting out. May 13th, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. I hate when people be like, we were both wrong. Who? I wasn't wrong for that.
Steve, I am just starting to understand 18-month-old language with my daughter. And that is hard enough for me to interpret. So then having to go from that, I barely speak English, by the way, myself, to having to try to interpret social media, to me is that's asking way too much. It is incredible. You're absolutely right. Like, we simultaneously put so much stock into what people are posting on social media without having any idea really what they are actually trying to posit or suggest to us. It seems like something is up, though. And I'm not trying to fan the flames if it turns out that this is actually 100% resolved. But again, I go back to just a couple of very fundamental aspects of this situation, which is that if Sean McDermott goes up to the stage or goes up to the podium when he's doing his media on Tuesday and a reporter says to him, hey, is everybody here? It is so easy for Sean McDermott to say, hey, the only player who's not here on the practice field today is Stefon Diggs. It's a situation that we're aware of, and there are no concerns whatsoever. He did the opposite of that. And once he did that, it was the breaking of the dam, and all of a sudden it's all of us having a lot of questions.
Even your daughter, Kinley Yates, can attest that something was up there. something was askew. DeAndre Hopkins flew in yesterday with the Patriots today. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, still currently visiting with the team, Steve. So as you and I are talking, he is meeting with somebody at the Patriots facility, and this is his second. And as of right now, the only other known visit that DeAndre Hopkins will be taking. And I don't know that I would expect any more visits from DeAndre Hopkins, at least anytime soon, Steve. And here's the reason why. Today is kind of like the final day of school for NFL teams. Every minicamp will be over by the end of the day today. And while head coaches and general managers are never out of pocket fully, many of them get away. And this is their, call it 5 weeks ahead, where they get to enjoy their family and have a much more balanced life than they do throughout the rest of the year. Facilities around the NFL are going to be a lot quieter for the next 5 weeks. It does not mean that DeAndre Hopkins can't go on a visit. He certainly could. I just think it's less likely. And I think what this probably comes down to, Steve, is a few things. But I'll leave with this. It's what DeAndre Hopkins wants. And when he spoke on a podcast recently, the I Am Athlete podcast, he noted how he wanted to play with an organization that had stable management, had a great quarterback. I think he mentioned the defense as well. I think all those things are like the responsible thing for any athlete to say. But if his primary objective at 31 years old is to get the biggest bite at the apple that's still left over, I wouldn't blame him a bit. And if money ends up guiding his decision, my response would be, go for it, man. Like, if you want to ring chase at 31, that's allowed. But ring chasing takes on a different meaning when you're a little bit closer to the end of your career. So my thought has continually been, hey, if you are DeAndre Hopkins, maybe the response here is pretty simple. Go get the most amount of money that you can get. Maybe it's a multi-year deal. 31, let's say you get a 2-year deal. When you're 33, if you still haven't won that ring, then go chase a ring somewhere else, right? Like, go to Kansas City in 2025, right? Like, make your reservation right now, because they're still going to be good unless Patrick Mahomes retires, and your chance to make a whole lot of money is dwindling. And this may be the last one. So I think that DeAndre Hopkins has to decide what he wants first and foremost. And I know that I'm not going to begrudge him if he decides that what he wants more than anything else is to make the most amount of money.
Yeah, I think you should be his agent. Just secure the bag 100%. And speaking of that,
I'll take a 1% fee.
You'll only take 1%. What a discount with Field Yates. Saquon Barkley, speaking of money, he said he would consider sitting out the season if he doesn't get a long-term contract. They franchise tagged him. Top running backs getting franchise tags, putting kind of a cap on the market right now. We talked about it earlier in the show. Why do you think the value of running backs has been going down across the league?
Yeah, there is evidence that you can go with the bargain route here. There's a graphic, a screenshot that someone, maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet that somebody made at some point right after the Super Bowl this year. And I want to say it's like 7 straight Super Bowl winners have had a running back whose base salary is like $1.25 million or less. There's just too many examples year in and year out of guys coming seemingly out of nowhere at the running back position, making a major impact. This past year, Isaiah Pacheco, of course, became the Chiefs' best running back, or at least, one of the most prominent running backs, along with Jerick McKinnon. But both of those guys were making like minimal amounts of money relative to other players on the roster. And those aren't the only examples, not just this year and not just in general, right? I mean, other guys who this past year are examples of players, and there are many others, by the way, who like played legitimate roles as either undrafted free agents or late round picks, like Bam Knight for the Jets as a rookie was an undrafted kid who ends up playing a bunch. Deontay Foreman was a highly drafted player a few years. He was a 3rd round pick when he came out of Texas. but he became the Panthers starting running back after the Christian McCaffrey trade, and all of a sudden that team started running the football better. If there were examples, if there were receivers every year coming out of the 7th round, or if there were, linebackers every year coming out of the undrafted ranks, I think the position resources would change. But running back, more than really any position on offense or defense in the NFL, has become the spot where teams are able to find value. And I feel for running back, Steve. I mean, when you and I were growing up watching football, think about the heydays of Marshall Faulk and Edgerrin James. Those were the guys. Eddie George, different
Emmitt
kind
Smith.
of back, but it was those were, Emmitt Smith was, those were MVPs of the league, literally. Now, in order for a running back to win the MVP, it hasn't happened with Adrian Peterson over a decade ago. It's like a 2,200 rushing yard season with 25 total touchdowns. It's a quarterback league. Running backs have become, at least for now, the most fungible spot to replace on the roster. It's just a bummer to see.
That's a great word, fungible. Brockman asked this question earlier in the show. How many running backs would you take over Justin Tucker right now?
Wow. I was not prepared for that one mentally. That's
the question field was who's more valuable? Are there 5 more running backs more valuable than Justin Tucker in the NFL right now?
Yeah, it's hard because it's the tricky part of this is that I'm not going to fence it. I'm going to give you an answer, I think, but it's you can easily replace I'll use the Panthers example again. They replaced Christian McCaffrey with Deontay Foreman and started running the football, at least on the ground, more effectively. Whereas with Justin Tucker, there's a fairly finite number of kickers that you trust in the world, right? You can go from Justin Tucker to, this is probably unfair to the Cowboys, but 4 missed extra points in a single playoff game this past year for a kicker, and Brett Maher had been a good player for them throughout the season. It's I think the downside of a bad kicker probably outweighs the downside of a bad running back, but I think obviously the upside of Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler and Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, that the game-by-game impact is so much more dramatic than a kicker. So maybe the answer is, 15 or 16, but I think when it's all said and done, we're going to have a really, really unique case for Justin Tucker as the best kicker ever. And when I see people talk about Sebastian Janikowski going in the first round, imagine if Justin Tucker had been a first-round pick and not an undrafted player out of Texas. We would have laughed at it at the time, right?
Yeah.
There's no doubt that if he had been the Ravens' first-round pick that year, I don't even remember who their first-round pick was in that specific season, we'd all be sitting here saying that was an absolute masterstroke by Baltimore.
Absolutely. And I don't think we're going to start seeing a lot of kickers being taken in the first round. But you make a great point. Brockman makes a great point. I mean, the value is there. And unfortunately, because the running back, they work so hard, the value is not there right now in this National Football League. Which rookie are you most excited to see play this year?
I would say Anthony Richardson is probably the low-hanging fruit answer, just because it feels like the ceiling floor variance is the widest. Anthony Richardson had 13 starts in his college career, and Florida fans will tell you last year wasn't always pretty. Everybody knows the number by now, but just to reiterate it, he completed under 53% of his passes in college, and I know that, there's more than just the quarterback that goes into completing passes. You got to be properly protected. Your receivers have to get open and catch the ball. But still, 53% is a really low number. On the other hand, if you were like one of my cousins who lives on YouTube, that's how they consume their content, or Fubu TV, then they would tell you, if you go watch the highlights, there's just so much, there's all kinds of Anthony Richardson upside, right? They see the 75-yard dazzling runs, or the 85 or the 55-yard pass from the one knee, or whatever it might be for Richardson, and they say, how could this guy not be the best player in the NFL next year? So an interesting game, so to speak, for Anthony Richardson. He's probably the one that I'm most excited to see, and I'm assuming he'll start right out of the gates, because I just think for the Colts, they're very cognizant of where they are right now as an organization. They may talk like they are going to be a playoff contender this year, but this is a team that knows that they are somewhere early in the spectrum, as opposed to on the precipice of being AFC title contender.
Definitely excited to see Anthony Richardson play. We alluded to it earlier, but I had some of the best summer trips of my life going to Nantucket with you, some of our friends, hanging with guys like Scott Pioli. What other than teaching you how to be the best clammer on the planet, what has Scott meant to your career?
Oh, gosh, where do I even begin? Scott is the best, probably the most principled human that I've ever met. And I think you see it a lot in his analysis these days, doing work for both CBS Sports and NFL Network. And I think I'm trying to think of just one word, and I could probably choose 55 or 60 of them. But discipline is probably the word that I was reminded of the most when I think about Scott. Discipline and process, Steve, because you and I both know that the final product that you see on a football field on Sunday is not just 22 players getting on the field, lining up, and making it happen. It goes way deeper than that. And Scott taught me the importance of the attention to detail that can go a long way towards turning these small steps taken during the off season into a much, much bigger product on Sundays. So I always love hanging out with Scott. I want to see him again soon. And Steve, this has rekindled the flame. You got to get out to Nantucket again.
I really this summer. I want to do it.
1,000 miles from LA. That's doable.
It is totally doable. By the way, Field Yates, for those who don't know, one of the best emailers on the earth. If you've ever gotten an email from Field Yates, really? It is constructed beautifully, and it's like he puts time and effort into these things. They're long, they're written exquisitely, and just want everybody watching the Rich Eisen Show to know about Field Yates emails. They're spectacular, Field.
Gosh.
Also,
man, that's inspired me to keep it going.
Also, Field, real quick, in 2012, the Ravens didn't have a first-round pick. They took Courtney Upshaw, 35th overall.
Okay, a pick that candidly did not really work out that well, right? I mean, it was so I think I don't know how long Upshaw lasted in the NFL, but
he played 6 years. Actually, if you look at their entire draft class in 2012, Tucker is better than all of them combined.
Yeah, the draft is definitely a crapshoot. So I always have like a lot longer leash in terms of like how people have I don't get as I don't know. People get very fired up about draft class whips here and there. And it's like if you're doing that long enough, pretty much every GM is going to have some really good picks and some really crappy ones along the way. But the Ravens' track record is exceptional for that 2012 class to be a relative miss, saved by Justin Tucker, as the team has been on multiple occasions in the regular and postseason.
Field, thank you so much for taking some time joining us today. So happy for all your success. Love watching you shine, doing your thing, growing. Tell Chapin and the family I say hello. Tell your mom, Paige, I said hello as well. I hope to see you soon, maybe in Nantucket, maybe somewhere else.
Soon. We're making it happen, Steve. I can't wait.
All right, Field. Thanks so much.
All right, buddy.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.